In this video, we are going to create a depth of field pass or Z pass using Arnold and AOVs. I have my scene, my animation that is just a pretty quick animation that my characters are moving Z, so that will allow me to play with that in a nice way. And I'm going to call my render settings, and using Arnold, I have my scene already. I'm going to start with my format, make sure that it's an EXR. I'm going to make sure that it the only option, the compression checked, is it merged or merge AOVs. The rest of my properties here are just as always, making sure my camera 1 is activated. I'm going to go to my AOVs tab, and in here I'm going to just look for the Z. I'm going to add it to my active AOVs. That brings the Z down here. Keep it as a float, keep it as an EXR. I'm going to check on my select driver, and that shows it up on the side here, and I make sure that AOVs is merged is checked on here still. Okay, with that, I pretty much just have my scene. I'm going to put it to render. So I'm going to just go and save my scene. And I'm going to submit it to render. We'll wait a few minutes for it to go through the whole sequence. Okay, so I have my sequence rendered finally. So we came back to my images folder inside of my folder there. Sometimes they come inside a temp folder. This time it did not, and they don't come with the actual name. Names are kind of weird in Arnold. But I'm going to just transfer them to my actual location of my project. We're going to use my After Effects project to work with them. Alright, so I have them there. I'm going to launch After Effects now. And here I am, and I'm going to open up my project where I rendered my my file. So let me just do that. Actually, I'm going to create better a new composition with this. So I'm going to make sure that I have my composition here. It's going to be called the Z depth. And I'm going to import my EXR. So let me just go and find that folder. Okay, I'm going to bring it my EXR as a sequence. I'm going to say import. And that comes in here. I'm going to just drop it down here. And that one is just my characters, not my background. If I wanted to put my background in it, I would have to import it. I'm going to do that also. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to just grab it and dump it here. That way I have it. There it is. And I'm going to simply grab it and put it underneath of my scene. And the characters are not aligning because my photograph or my background is not matching correctly. I need to actually move it up a little bit to let my characters match there better. I can scroll through my timeline. I just got it a little bit shorter here. And scroll through my timeline, so I see my characters coming in towards the camera. Okay, so I have that right now, and I'm going to try to create my compositing here based on the EXR effect that I want to do. In order to do that, I need to put all of this onto the same composition, to a single composition, in order to be able to apply the ZDept not only to the characters but to the photograph, because right now the photograph is all in focus too, and I need to make both match the ZDept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my composition here. I'm going to create a new composition from selected. which is a way of me creating a new embedded composition. So that is the ZDept gets is inside of my new composition ZDept 2. I can rename that one, or I can just keep it the way it is. I'm going to have ZDept 2, and in that I'm going to bring in my EXR sequence, which contains the ZDept information in it, only that is not shown. And I'm going to here create look for an extractor, which you have already in my editor presets. I'm going to just type it again, extractor, there it is. I'm going to grab it, I'm going to dump it on my EXR line, or my EXR sequence, and that puts the effect on that layer. And that layer, I'm going to click on the red, green, and blue, and that launches the little interface. And here I'm going to just click for my Z. If I had more AOVs will show. In this case, I'm going to choose for the Z for red, green, and blue. I'm going to keep the alpha with copy. I'm going to say OK, and that makes it all white. If you leave it like that, that'd be fine. But I can also actually change it, because I need to make this more like a grayscale variation depending on the depth. So just increase the white point, or modify the white point. You start discovering that when an object is middle ground is gray, when it's back in the background is white. So let's say if I move my timeline, you see the closer my robot gets to the screen, the better it is, or the blurrier it gets. So that is making my ZDept get active. Now there is something that I need to do, and it is that this right now, this grayscale is affecting my characters, but it's not affecting my background, or at least you see the characters are masked, and I need to change that so that I can affect the whole composition. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my project. I'm going to click on my sequence that comes with the ZDept in it. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say interpret footage. I'm going to change and go to main. I'm going to change it from pre-multiply to ignore, so that way it ignores the alpha, and you can see how it starts showing the depth of in grayscale for the whole thing. Now I'm going to go back here to my effects, and I can fine-tune the value of how much I want the gray to be affected. There, I'm going to just keep it a little bit less. I can play with the black and with the white depending on what I want it to do. So it's up to you how you can test it. I'm going to try to bring the white a tiny bit more. I'm just maybe a bit more like that. See how that works? And that way it'll put the background very blurry and a bit sharper the character. Okay, with that in place, I'm gonna just turn off this layer, and that has created an extra little problem for me here, and that is because the ZDept lost its transparency, because of course I changed the way the sequence was read. So actually I'm gonna go back to that sequence, the composition here, and this guy is covering completely the background, so I'm actually have to import that one again. So I'm going to import that sequence, and this second time I'm going to import it keeping the transparency on, so make sure that that one I'm going to rename it here. There's going to be ZDept, I'm going to call it alpha. That way I keep my alpha in it. I'm going to make sure that the interpret footage on that one is pre-multiplied. That's okay. I'm going to use that one here instead of the other one, because the other one I'm using it for the ZDept information. So I'm back to where it was. If I go to the composition number 2, I see that, but I still have this one, which is the black and white, which is what I want. Okay, so I'm back here, and I'm in composition number 2, and now I'm going to apply to this one, to the depth of the one that contains the background and everything. I'm going to apply an effect, and the effect is going to be a blur and sharpen. I'm going to go with the camera lens blur, and you can see that it's applying right now. And I'm here, I'm going to just change the blur map. I'm going to choose the layer number 1, which contains the information here, and luminance is the channel, center of the map is fine, and you can see already how I'm going to just try to move closer so I can see it a bit more. You see the guy in the background a bit blurrier compared to the one in the foreground. If you you play with it, you can generate a different amount of Z effect. You can flip it so that there is a bit more of sharpness in a different place of the sequence. Right now, of course, he is a sharper. This one is a bit blurrier, and if you crank it up, for example, you'll be able to see the effect a lot more dramatic. You can see it there. I'm gonna say 5 on that one. And we see that yes, the object is getting blurry and the robot is getting sharper here in front, but my foreground is not being blurred. And the reason for that is because the layer is using layer 1, the source is using that, but we need actually to use the effects and the masks as the option for it to be able to take both, not only the effect but not only the mask that comes with it, but the effect. And you can see right now how it already have, when I go to effects and masks, it takes all of it in consideration, and you can see now how much this guy is sharp and that guy being blurry in the background. Now another thing is that you see some of the effects on the edges. Do you see this little black line here, which is not a good thing? So I try to just check here on the repeat edge. That way you see that the edges get fixed and improved. And now I can just try to play with it so that I can try, reducing how much I want it to be blurry. You can just reduce the amount if you want. So it's not as much, maybe just 3. You can see that there. And that way you already have your effect the way you want it. You can see the farther it goes. And so he is, or you can crank it up a bit more, and then you play with the different aspects of the focal distance, so you can increase or decrease that value according to whatever you feel like it needs to be in your scene. That's pretty much it. The rest of it is pretty much rendering it out, and that's it. All right.